I just turned off the music. It was a bit too, it was getting me excited.
Well, if I start and then a few more can join us before Sandra actually gets to speak. So hello everybody. I'm Claire Leach and I'm the Dean of the Management School here at Lancaster, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all first in our inaugural lecture series. I think when I became Dean, I was really keen that we would celebrate the careers of our newly appointed professors and their research or their scholarly activity. And this sort of has come to fruition now, which is absolutely super. So becoming a professor is a really significant achievement and one that should be celebrated. It isn't a random occurrence. It can be a bit of a roller coaster ride at times, I think. And it takes there are many characteristics that one, I think, develops along the way or has. So it takes tenacity, strategic focus, resilience, commitment, intellectual curiosity, capability, and also the ability to develop and gain knowledge and expertise around a particular field or specialism. So you become an acknowledged, internationally respected academic. And Sandra Nolte epitomizes all of these characteristics. And indeed, I think she really is an exemplar role model of the well-rounded academic. So Sandra joined the Departments of Accountancy and Finance in August 2013, which I'm sure, Sandra, seems like quite a while ago now. And you became head of departments in August 2021. And in addition to managing one of the largest departments in the management school and leading it and doing it very well, managed to achieve your personal chair in June 2024. So that is an absolutely great achievement. So Sandra's a financial econometrician who focuses on point process-based volatility modelling using high-frequency data, and I'm sure we'll find out a little bit more about that as she talks to us. I'm delighted she's going to share her pioneering research and her journey with us, and she's entitled her lecture A Tale of Coincidences and Candlesticks, and maybe the candlesticks are a good reference to the time of year in which we're currently in, Sandra. So you've got about 40 minutes to share your story with us, and then we're going to have a Q&A, which will be moderated by Maria, who's our Associate Dean for Research. So I think without further ado, Sandra, you can share the screen and your story.
Share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, but I need to look at the other side, so just bear with me because I have two screens and somehow it's a little bit weird here. So thank you very much, Claire, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending such a lecture at this time of the day, and I'm going to explain why such a lecture. Before I start, I need to say two things. I was in Shanghai until yesterday, so I'm a little bit jet lagged, and if I make no sense and start speaking weirdly, just forgive me, please, because I did that this morning at 9 when I was teaching. I started speaking French because my brain just went away and students looked at me in a really weird way, which I had to apologize 10 times, but it doesn't matter. And I think the second thing I would like to say is it shouldn't be me who is celebrated actually today, but when I prepared the slides, I was thinking it should be all the person who actually along the way allowed me or enabled me to be here today. So meaning those are more important than what I achieved, because being a professor just happened. This is why the title of this talk is called A Tale of Coincidences and Candlesticks. And well, I will explain why candlesticks in the talk later on. And I think from what is going to happen in the next couple of slides, you are going to understand why it's a coincidence and why there was opportunities, but it wasn't planned at all. So that is somehow where we are going to get to with that particular talk. Now, as Claire mentioned, it's the first time that we have this professorial inaugural lecture series. So, and while I'm the first who is doing that. So somehow it's a blessing in a sense, and it's a curse in another one. A blessing because, well, no one did it before, so I can set the standards. That's nice. A curse because no one did it before, and well, I have no standards to go with. I'm going to set them in a way I think they should be. So I went back to Maria and Claire in the last couple of weeks and said, what the heck do you want me to do during this lecture, basically? And this is what came out. So I got a long email, and among this long email, they said to me, well, you should be sharing your personal and academic story, illustrating how you have reached this stage in your career. Well, that's the easy part, actually, because the rest of the email said to me, well, you should celebrate and showcase your work to a diverse audience and avoid overly technical or specialized language. Now, what you need to understand here is I'm an econometrician. There are equations everywhere on what I'm doing research-wise. So avoiding overly technical and specialized language is quite a challenge, to be honest. So let me see if I am, well, I took the challenge in the right way, or if I'm doing something completely weirdly. So let me first talk about, well, myself, and well, you are going to understand why the title is Coincidence, Opportunities, and a Lot of Firsts. So let me go back to the 18-year-old myself. So when I was 18-year-old, because this is how it started, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting today here and talking to you today. Well, I'm the first one in my family who actually went to university, so I didn't have anyone to actually help me understand what university life and what studying is, not even to study what. So I went to an open day, and this is really important for all of our colleagues who are going to open days and trying to actually convince students to come and study in Lancaster. I went to that open day in Strasbourg, and well, I knew what I didn't want to do, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was pretty good in math, and I was pretty good in studying German. So I went to the German stand, looked at that person, at that academic who tried to convince me to come and study German, and to the student who was there. And well, after talking to them during 10 minutes, I was thinking, oh my God, are they boring? And don't tell them, because it's really bad to say. But somehow that's the impression that they gave me, basically. And then I continued walking into that open day to different stands. And well, there was this math student standing on this math tent, making some advertisement for studying math with economics or econometrics, basically. And he was really enthusiastic, and the academic next to him was also enthusiastic. And I was thinking, oh gosh, that's what I'm going to study in my life somehow, without meaning that's the only reason why I started studying math, not because I wanted to do that necessarily, but because the person's trying to sell it to me did a really good job, actually. And this is why I'm sitting here today. Now, what you need to understand is I speak English with German accent, and I come from a small village near to the German border in France. So I'm not German, but I'm French. And the way how studying in French was when I was 18, so almost 26 years ago, or 28 years ago, was actually everyone, when they do a bachelor, when they do a baccalaureate, so an A level, can go to university. And the idea of the university is actually to kick people out. So in the sense that I started my course of study with 126 people, and after 5 years, we were 11. And at that particular point in time, when we were only 11 of us left over in studying econometrics, I discovered during my master that actually I like research. I like doing research, and I like playing around with data sets and estimating a lot of weird things and doing those kind of things. So basically, at that point of time, I was asked, do you want to do a PhD? And at the beginning, what I was thinking is, yeah, I can go to industry and I can come back. It's not an issue somehow. But given the way how the French system was at that particular point in time, I thought as well, if I go, I'm never going to come back. Meaning being in that kicking out system is not really necessarily what I want to come back later on. And this is why I decided, okay, Sandra is going to do a PhD. But like in Lancaster, Strasbourg has the issue that they don't have a lot of scholarship to be able to give to PhD students. And this is how the professor, which taught me econometrics, said to me, hey, there is someone in Germany, in Constance, who is looking for a PhD student. Just go and apply. And this is how, well, little Sandra, with 23 years old, went to Germany to do a PhD. And well, the rest is a little bit history, because At the same time, there is another person called Ingmar who studied in Constance as well and did his PhD with the same supervisor, basically. And this is how, well, the Nolte family became an dual career couple in a sense. And well, at that time, when I started my PhD in Germany, I was the first female PhD student that my supervisor had, meaning doing a PhD in a mathematically or quantitatively oriented field was not something that a woman did at that particular point in time, which also led to some weird discussions sometimes where they said to me, just cover your ears, because I was only among men, basically. What we are going to say, you shouldn't hear. So just cover your ear and ignore what we are saying now, because it's not made for a woman to hear, which led to some kind of weird situations. But well, you get used to it. Now that's my early academic year, and then well, we decided with my husband actually after our PhD to spend a postdoc year in Vancouver, which actually turned really short because we never managed to reach Vancouver. And although we had everything prepared, everything ready to go, but well, a month before we went to Vancouver, we went to a conference in Warwick, and then they looked at us and said, "Do you want to come and work in Warwick?" And basically, this is by pure coincidence, we ended up at Warwick Business School in Coventry, somehow for 5 years, where we always said, oh, it's okay, it's only for 5 years, and we can go back, it's not an issue. Well, that was 2008. We never left the UK since 2008. And this is where Warwick for me became Leicester, and I'm going to explain that in the next slide. And then at some point of time, 11 years ago, Lancaster came around the corner, and this is how we ended up in Lancaster, both of us. This is also why we are here. But let me go back a little bit in time and try to explain what my academic journey was at that particular point in time. So I did a PhD in econometrics in Germany, and then when my husband got a position in Warwick, I went there as a postdoc with a, how do you call that, with a research grant from a German research institute, which allowed me to do research in the UK. So which was the time of my life, during 2 years of my life, I was paid just to do research in the UK by a German research institute, which was really nice because, well, I could do research day in and day out. But what's happened in Warwick is, you need to imagine we were at the beginning of our academic career, and if you have a husband who did his PhD with the same supervisor, you are so identical at that particular point in your career because, well, we had both a PhD in econometrics. He did it in financial econometrics, and I did it in microeconometrics. But technically speaking, on the paper we look the same. And this is where they told us one Nolte is enough. This is what we were told, and I think, okay, fair enough at that time. I'm going to find a job somewhere else. But the trouble was, well, Ingmar was located in Coventry, so I had to find something around Coventry, which was in a commuting distance. And this is how I became a lecturer in accounting and finance at the School of Management in Leicester. And well, what was funny in Leicester is I was the only econometrician in the building. So you need to imagine the school was located in one particular building on campus, and I was the only one being an econometrician in this whole school, which actually after a couple of months led to a start of what I call interdisciplinary research, because unlike Lancaster, where we are sitting departments together, in Leicester, the whole school was sitting together, meaning my colleagues on the left was a marketing colleague, was doing marketing, and my colleague on the right was doing human resources. And one day, my colleague on the right came and knocked on the door and said, if you do the math, I do the writing. I said, what the heck are you talking about? And, yeah, if you do the math and you do the calculation, I do the writing of the paper, and then we start working together. So you need to imagine quantitative meets qualitative, and it took us a long time to understand each other, but this is how we started those interdisciplinary world and opening my perspective on the world that, well, I need to be able to communicate mathematical skills, mathematical findings or mathematical formulas in a way that people understand, which also I had to do with my parents, because during a long time when I was studying, my parents just said, I have no idea what she studied. And I wasn't able to explain to them what I was doing. The only thing they said to everyone is, she's studying weird things, but she's happy. That was the only thing that my parents knew. The rest is history as well. And then, well, at some point of time, I think Lancaster was crazy enough to make a dual offer to the Nolte family. So somehow this is where we joined Lancaster 11 years ago. Me as a lecturer, and well, I became a senior lecturer in between, and Ingmar as a reader at the beginning. And this is also the time where I started working together with industry partner in actually a pretty weird way, because I was on maternity leave and I was bored. So somehow, I shouldn't say that because, well, I like my kids, but I was deeply bored, to be honest. I was, and somehow I had some friends who worked in industry, and this is how, during the time I was on maternity leave, we started just discussing by saying, what are you doing in your company? So how are you estimating volatility? How are you building portfolios and those kind of things? To the point where after a couple of hours discussion over several days, said, we don't care about what you do with your big data set, Sandra. We are not doing those kind of weird things. To which then I will say, but it must be useful for you in a way. It's not simply useful in academia. So this is how, meaning opening up and trying to understand what real life is doing. Because according to my parents, I never left school. Meaning I went from primary school to high school to university, and God's sake, she never left, and she stayed at university, and she's somehow stuck there. So somehow the real world, I don't really know how it works. This is why having this working relationship with industry partner became more important the last couple of years to understand what is going on. And that particular collaboration with industry happened via PhD students that we have together, meaning, and that is something, well, I have a sweet spot for PhD students, to be honest, because I like seeing them develop and, well, being able to do things that they think at the beginning they are not able to do. And it's also a way for us to see, to get a bridge between the both worlds, because the PhD students knew what happened in the industry, knew what I wanted to do as well. And somehow it started a collaboration, which is now, I guess we are doing that since, I have no idea, 8 years now together with several industry partners, and they became more over time. Somehow, meaning we started with one particular company. Nowadays, we are doing that with 3 companies together. And well, it's increasing as the time passes by. The trouble is, it is really time consuming at the beginning, because you really need to understand what do they want and what is important for them and what is important for me, and can we find some common ground in between. So that is how that side of what I did, academically speaking, started with me being bored, which is not really nice to say, but it is what it is somehow. And bless my children in the way, because they don't know that, and it's good that they don't know, and they are not in the call either. What I did as well in between is to become MSc program director, first of a really small MSc in quantitative finance when I was still a lecturer. And so that MSc was taught by 4 departments and 2 faculties. So I had a lot of coffee at that time, because trying to coordinate 2 faculties and 4 departments, meaning you need to talk a lot. And it's a lot of sitting together and trying to coordinate all of them, and that it goes smoothly. And then after a while, I also became additionally the program director of our MSc Finance and our MSc Accounting and Financial Management until, well, I think from 2017 to 2021, to the point of time where I became head of department. And I am the first female head of department in accounting and finance, apparently. So somehow, and I don't know if it's an occupational hazard or not. So that is what my colleagues can decide when I'm not head of department anymore at some point of time. But it's a role, well, I do and I wanted to do, because I thought I can make a difference. I can help this department to go in a particular direction. So being head of department is not as bad as you imagine, but I think I am lucky that I have colleagues which are quite supportive, and somehow who are bearing with the craziness of myself, because sometimes I guess they don't understand why I would like to do bits and pieces, but I think they trust me enough to know that I'm only having their best interest in mind. So somehow it's nice to be supported and to have to have them all along. Meaning it's sometimes, well, it's like kindergarten as well, but all in all, it's nice to be able to push them and to see how they develop actually, and being able to be a part of their journey as well. And what I wanted to say is, you don't need to be a professor to become head of department. I wasn't. I was a senior lecturer at that time, and during 2 years of my life, I was a senior lecturer. And well, I think it shouldn't stop you from doing things that you believe in and things that you think are important. And well, I think it just happened that I became a professor a year ago, meaning it's not something I was looking for during my career. I just did bits and pieces along the way because I thought that it's okay to be a program director because I want to do something for the students. And some of them I thought it's okay to become a head of department because I can help my colleagues. But the aim wasn't to become a professor. The aim was actually to do something useful and to help people around me or to help students. So I mean, it just happened that I am now a professor. It wasn't, if you ask the 18-year-old myself, I would have told you, no, I don't care about becoming a professor or not, which is actually true. I didn't care to become a professor or not. I am one because of all the things I did along the line. I wanted to do. This is just what happens thereafter. Meaning I know it's a weird thing to say, but somehow it just happened to be, and that is how I became a professor, I think, because I like, or a head of department because I like people, I like talking and I like listening, which is good or bad depending on who you talk to actually, or has some particular consequences on your private life when you have your husband working in the same departments, but makes our children really happy because they are saying, yeah, now Papa has also to listen to Mama at university, not only at home, which is something, well, which happens and creates some issues sometimes. But that is broadly what brought me to the position I have currently, meaning it's me not only looking at what I do research-wise, but also looking broader around at what other people are doing and how maybe I can help with the quantitative knowledge that I have to help them do what they want to do later in their paper, in their research, in their projects, which led me to work with people working in human resources, in politics, in marketing, and those kind of things, meaning but it's a stretch, meaning you need to be open-minded. You need to say, I might need to now take 2 weeks of my life to understand how they are talking, what vocabulary they are using compared to what I am using. And somehow it's just trying to figure out where are the commonalities in those particular ways. So a lot of first. I didn't know that I'm going to end up here when I was 18 years old. I didn't know that I'm going to stay in academia. This is why there were some coincidences where I also met my husband. That was a coincidence as well. So somehow just leave all the doors open. I guess that's the message here. Just go for it and see where it leads to. Sometimes it leads to something really nice, and sometimes, well, you want to explore, but that's a different story. Now, let me come to Candlesticks, because that is the second part of the talk, basically, or the second part of the title. And this is where I had a lot of issues, because trying to present some work in a really non-technical way, well, is a stretch for an econometrician, basically. And I think that project summarizes it all, and I think it's an easy way to explain to you what I am doing without overly going into mathematically speaking terms, actually. It is a joint work with Yi-Fan Lee, who was our first PhD student that we had in Lancaster, who is currently working at Manchester. Obviously, my husband, given that we are sharing our surnames, it's obvious. And somehow Yi-Fan Yu, who was our PhD student until July this year and is now working as a postdoc at the Oxford Mann Institute in Oxford, basically. And somehow, well, what's needless to say, all the credit of this project are going to Yi-Fan and Yi-Fan, and all the mistakes are Ingmar's and myself. So somehow, if you want to blame someone, blame Ingmar and me, and well, just applause Yi-Fan and Yi-Fan for what they have done. Now, let me start. There are equations, there are graphics, and there is the overall intuition of what is going on. So just bear with me. Sometimes I guess the intuition is coming over sometimes, even if you see some weird things. So what we are doing in this project is actually trying to create, or we are not trying, but we created a non-parametric estimator for integrated variance using high-frequency candlestick information. And what we are showing in the paper is this estimator that we are developing here is robust to jumps and to local episodes of really highly directional price movements, which can either be a gradual jump, a drift burst, and persistent noise. I'm going to come back to that later on. That is just what the paper does, basically. Now, why candlestick? So candlestick is not the real candle with a stick that I'm going to show you. Candlestick information is basically what you have here on the slide. Is you have a high, you know what is the high in a particular time interval, you know what was the highest price in the time interval, what was the open price in the time interval, the closing price in the time interval, and the lowest price. So those are 4 information that you have. And why are we looking at that is basically, if you are a normal investor, you might not have access to what we have access to at university, which are high frequency data, nanosecond frequency, so really a huge amount of data. What you might have access to using your normal trading application or platform that you have is just the information of what is the highest and the lowest price in a particular interval and what is the opening and the closing price in a particular interval. And that is what we consider as a candlestick. So the candle completely is the length. So you can go from the highest price that you observe to the lowest price that you observe in an interval. Then you have the whole length of the candle. Or you can just look at the body of the candle, which starts with the opening price and with the closing price in that particular interval, which is just the body of the candle here. And what we are going to use in the estimator that we are going to construct is the information of the whole length of the candle and the information of only the body of the candle. And I'm going to explain that if the candle is black here in the middle, we are looking at prices which are going down all the time. So we are looking at the period of time where the price is going down. And if the candle is white, we are looking at prices going up. So just to mimic the movement of the price process. So if you want to depict that in a graphic, and that comes from the Bolas-Lee and Lee paper, if you take a particular price, a particular asset, it doesn't matter what it is, you have the time here and you have 1 minute time interval. So for every single 1 minute time interval, you can create that candlestick and just draw a graphic with all those candlesticks, basically saying when the price goes down here, you see they are black and they might be completely full, or if the price is going up, they are white and you might still have a wick on the candle actually. Now, and I'm going to explain a little bit later on why it is called realized candlestick wick in a couple of slides later. Now, why are we looking at that and why is that important and why did we look to try to actually create this non-parametric estimator? So why are we looking for that thingy? So let me give you an example. So on what happens intradaily. So meaning if you don't look at a day, but you look at what happens in a day on a stock exchange for particular assets, I guess the most well-known flash crash which occurred and that everyone knows about is the flash crash which happened in 2010 in the US stock market in the E-mini S&P 500 future contracts. So what happened on that day at 2:30 in the afternoon, somehow you could see the price dropped relatively sharply during that day at 2:30, and during 30 minutes interval, it went up again. So meaning what you see is that we have a really sharp price movement in one particular direction, and then it recovers basically at that particular point. You have a really sharp opposite price direction. So that is called the flash crash, downwards movement with an upward movement. And basically what happened during that time was that $1 trillion was lost on market value. So those 30 minutes here erased $1 trillion. So now it's something which is quite important. And what you see here is also, because we have this sharp movement here, you have also high frequency returns, which are positively autocorrelated. So that's a pattern we could use to actually forecast volatility. Now you are going to say to me, okay, that happens once, so why do I care? So what we discovered basically in the literature and in the time being is those drift bursts or flash crashes are happening more often. So it's not only the first one which happened, there were several of them for some commodities, for treasury bonds, for some foreign currencies, basically. And what happens, what we see is they might not be as pronounced as the one I had the picture before on the previous slide, but they exist also at a smaller scale, and they exist more often in recent years, which actually casts some doubts about market efficiencies and the vulnerability of the market in that particular case. And it also happens in the cryptocurrency market. So it's not only one particular market, you find them everywhere. Now, I was talking about gradual jumps in the first slide. So what is a gradual jump is a period of time where the price don't jump in once, but you have several small periods of jump and it jump around. So here it took somehow like 10, 20 minutes until it reached the highest point, basically. So that is what is a gradual jump. So not one big one, but smaller ones which accumulate over time. That is something we need to take into account as well. And then you have some other examples of different kind of flash crashes here in 1989. At the beginning of the trading day, you have this kind of flash crash as well. Again, in the E-mini S&P 500 future price, it existed also as a gradual jump with some flash crashes in between. So what you see here is in March, on the 22nd and 23rd of March 2005, you could see that the price gradually here went down over the day between 1 and 3 o'clock when the stock exchange, or 4 when the stock exchange closed, and you have see it go gradually down with some flash crashes in between. So with some gradual jump with different pattern, it continued gradually going down the day thereafter until it stabilized again, meaning those are just example of showing you that those things exist. It's not me making them up for one that it happened once, it happens all along when you look at intraday data. Now the question is, why do I care about that? Because somehow it's, yeah, well, it happens, so why the heck do I care? So why the heck do I care is because if you are trying to estimate volatility or to model volatility, it is really important that you have an estimator which does a good job, basically, or which estimates volatility without being biased in a sense. So what we are looking for, and let me just explain to you where we are coming from, is usually, well, it's a lot of math on the slide, and I'm conscious that not everyone knows what a continuous E2 or semi-martingale is. So let me just explain broadly that what we can do is we can actually decompose the return, if you like, in as two components. A first one, which is looking at the mean, if you like, at the drift of the process, and the second one, which looks at the variance of the process or the spot volatility, basically. And what you can show is that we can calculate the integrated variance over a particular point in time. Then this mean here, this process becomes negligible. And what we are going to look at is we are going to try to construct smaller and smaller and smaller times interval, which is basically, technically speaking, increasing the number of observations that we have. So meaning if you go from 1 minute interval to 1 second and then 1 millisecond, so if the time span becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, you are going to have more and more observations. And what you can see is that a feasible estimator so you can estimate the integrated variance, what we are looking for actually using realized volatility. So realized volatility is just taking the intraday return that you have, squaring them, and that gives you the estimate of volatility of the variance, if you like, in that particular case. Now that has been shown in the literature. That is a really nice estimator as long as you don't have jumps and you don't have the patterns that I showed you before. As soon as the patterns, if you have jumps, then RV estimator is going to be biased, and you will need to find a jump robust version of that RV estimator. That particular estimator is also biased if you have locally explosive trends. So if you have flash crashes and those gradually jumps. So another estimator was developed by Anderson, Lee, and Todorov in 2023, which is called the difference returned volatility estimator, which is then also taking care about that particular pattern that your estimator is doing the job that it should do. Now, what we are proposing here is actually an estimator which can take care about all of those cases. So it doesn't matter if you have a jump, it doesn't matter if you have locally explosive trends, our estimator is robust against both. So meaning it's still behaving in the way it should behave and estimate the quantity you would like to estimate in that particular case. Now, let me just remind you of what we are doing. We are trying to construct and estimate a new robust integrated variance estimator, which is only based on 4 information, which is the highest price, the lowest price, the opening price, and the closing price in a particular time interval. Now, that puts us basically in all the literature around range-based volatility estimation, which I'm not going to talk about that now. It's just for you, for those of you who somehow know what I'm talking about, is where I'm getting to. But let me explain to you the idea behind the estimator, because it just needs a picture and the intuition about why this estimator is working and why it is just easy to use. Now, assume that you have, let's take this case here in the middle. Assume that you are in a small time interval where the price is only going down during the whole time. So it starts at the beginning of the interval and it just goes down up to the end of the time interval. In that particular case, the highest price you observe in the interval and the opening price is exactly the same. And the closing price and the lowest price in the interval is exactly the same, which means that in a time interval where only the price is going down, what is going to happen is that the candlestick that you are looking at has no wick, meaning there is no little wick here or little wick here. It's the highest price and the opening price is the same, and the closing price and the lowest price is the same, meaning the whole length of the candle and the whole body of the candle is exactly the same. They just coincide with each other. Now, that is when the price goes down, that is when the price goes up in that particular interval only, and you only see a wick on the candle if the highest price of the interval and the lowest price of the interval does not coincide with the opening and the closing price in the interval, meaning if you have a pattern like that, the opening price here and the closing price here is not, that is the lowest price here and that is the highest price here, so they are not the same. This is why we have a wick on the candle. Now, what our estimator is going to do is to take advantage of that, to say we are going to compare the length, the complete length of the candlestick with the wick, if the wick occurs, with the body of that particular candle. If you are in a time frame where the price is only going down, and you calculate the difference between the length of the candlestick, the whole thingy, and you deduct the body, if you are in a time interval where the price is always going down, both are equivalent, and the difference between both is equal to 0. In a time frame where you have a difference between when the price is going up and down, you are going to have a little wick. And that is what we are going to use to actually construct our estimator. So what we are constructing here is the high minus low range, so the whole length of the candlestick. And we are going to deduct the open to close return, which is basically saying what we are doing is we are taking the length, which is WI, and we are going to deduct the return, which is the difference between the opening and the close in absolute value. In a time interval where the price is only going to go down, those two are going to be identical, meaning the length of the candlestick is exactly the length of the body, and those two disappear. And in case the price is fluctuating, you are going to be able to map that particular thing. So meaning what is left over is just asking the question, does the candlestick, is there a wick left over or not? That is the only thing we need to actually estimate volatility at that particular point in time, or integrated volatility. And that is our estimator. It's just the difference between the length of the candle and the body of the candle squared. And what we are going to be able to show is technically speaking, that our estimator is consistent, meaning, if you like, in a different way, it converges in a uniform convergence in probability to the integrated volatility, what the integrated variance, sorry, what you would like to have here. So now putting differently, it is a good boy. Our estimator is doing a good job. It's going to do the right thing, basically. And what we are showing in the paper as well is that that particular estimator has a stable convergence in low to a mixed normal distribution with an asymptotic variance, which is 4 times smaller than the asymptotic variance of the estimator developed by Anderson and al. in their 2023 paper, meaning we have a better variance, which is 4 times smaller than what they have in their paper. And that is quite nice to have, because our estimator is easy, but it does a better job in that sense. Now, what we are showing in the paper, what I'm not going to show here in the slides, is that our estimator is robust against finite and infinite jumps. It's robust against extreme returns, persistence, against persistent noise, and so forth and so on. So there is a lot of robustness tests going on in the paper. We are also going to show, because one asked, what is, if you want to switch robustness, what the estimator is currently, and find the most efficient one. We're able to do that as well and show that in that case, our estimator has even a smaller variance, because that particular coefficient is smaller than what we had before. So it's even doing a better job, but we need to then exchange robustness a little bit for having the most efficient one. We are performing a test, or we are creating a Hausmann test for extreme price movements. That is also in the paper, but that's not important. Let me show you the simulation that we do and the real application. So in the simulation, just to forget the slide before, what we are simulating are gradual jump, so that kind of behavior. We are simulating a flash crash, and we are simulating a gradual jump with some flash crashes in between. So that is what we do, that math on this slide is doing, basically. And what we are looking at is we are simulating 1 minute, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and 5-minute candlesticks for 10,000 days. And we are comparing our estimator with some estimators which exist in the literature. So the one of Mancini, which is a truncated RV, and the one developed in the Anderson and al. Paper, this difference return volatility estimator. And what we can show, basically, on every single frequency that we are looking at, from 1 minute to 5 minutes, in 4 different cases, when we have no jumps, when we have gradual jumps, when we have flash crashes, and we have a mixture of both, we can see that our estimator, regardless of which frequency and which category you are looking at, is always doing better in a root mean squared error sense than all the other ones. So we are doing better than everything else which existed before among those 3 here. We are also having an application. So we are trying to forecast volatility with a HAR model using 5-minute candlestick observations from January 20 on the spider between January 2014 and December 2021. We have an in-sample we are using 1,000 days in sample, and we are using a rolling window forecast. And we use this HAR model, which is basically saying that the volatility that you observe today depends, or that you have, is depending on the daily one, on the weekly one, and on the monthly one. We are using different estimators for the dependent variable and different ones for the explanatory variable. And what you can see is that in all the cases that we have, regardless of which volatility estimator, if it's RV, realized volatility, the difference return volatility, or our ones as the left-hand side variable, and regardless of what explanatory variable we are using, the last one is ours. What we see is that in terms of mean squared error and Q-like, we are doing better in all the cases. So if you look at the last line here, the number is always smaller than all the other ones. So we are doing better than all the other ones, also in an empirical case. And we can show that where the gain is the most is if we have periods of jumps and periods of drift bursts. That is where our estimator, or the robustness, is coming from. So basically, forget about the slide. What is important is the first bullet point is, what I hope that you can take home with you today is to say, you can estimate volatility using high frequency candlestick estimator, because you only need 4 values: the opening, the closing, the highest and the lowest price. And you can just calculate the difference between, and sum them up in a squared manner, between the length of the candle and the body of the candle. And it gives you a good estimator to do that. And that is basically what I wanted to tell you today, to say, even if the math is ugly behind, it's really easy to use. You just need to calculate the difference and to sum the differences and to square them. And somehow it is to say, even if econometrics is a little bit weird sometimes and has a lot of weird mathematics behind, it's not that bad. And it can be conveyed in some way, I hope, easily. If you want more details, they are in the paper, and I can send you the paper, which basically says the paper itself is only 20-page long, but the appendix is, I think, 35-page long. So somehow to get all those things derived and explained. But it is easy to convey. And somehow I hope that I convinced you that if you want to analyze or model volatility, or forecast volatility, that is one estimator that you can use if you only have 4 data points for every single interval that you have. And thank you very much for listening to me at 4 o'clock and listening to econometrics, which is not necessarily what someone would like to do at this time of the day. And I hope that I didn't scare you too much. And thank you very much.
Sandra, that was fantastic, and you definitely met the brief. So thank you so much for that. I'm just looking to the audience and wondering if anybody's got any questions. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to ask if anybody's questions, but I suppose somebody's got their hand up. Radka's got a hand up. I was going to, sorry, Radka, just before you jump in, I was going to just take chair's privilege, which was, I mean, this is really fascinating for us to hear and learn in detail your journey and your work. But as you were talking, I was thinking, well, who are the stakeholders that are going to work with this information and this modelling and estimations that you've come up with? You know, are you taking this to financial analysts, banks, traders? Who are the practice or practitioners who you'll take your work to?
Yeah, everyone. Basically, the idea was to open that up to you and me, possibly, or everyone who is working in the financial industry and having not access to high frequency observations, basically. I mean, you don't need to have those nanosecond or second by second data. You can actually, meaning what the message of the paper is to the practitioner outside is basically to say, even if you only have those 4 data points for everything, and you can open Yahoo Finance, that you can see that, meaning everyone has access to that information. It's not something you need to pay for. It's just trying to say, to improve, to get a, how do you say that? To get a tool to the normal world, basically, to say that's what you can do without using necessarily the highest frequency of the data that you have, and without using weird estimation techniques. Meaning it's not coming with, you know, some weird modeling and weird estimation and those kind of things. It's just summing up to a difference. And that is the beauty of the whole thing, is to say it's accessible to everyone. They just need to be able to deduct 2 numbers and add them up all the time.
Great. Thanks, Sandra. So I'm just looking, there's a couple of hands up. We've got in the room, we've got Radka first and then Igor, and then we have a question in the chat as well. But Radka, if I pass over to you, please.
Thank you. Sandra, thank you so much for your talk. I just wanted to say how inspirational you have been for me personally. Some of you will know that we shared a corridor in the old building, and we always used to say with Sandra that we sit on the border. So she was on the accounting and finance border. So we were the border control. And if you applied the high frequency observation, you could see very high frequency movements between my office and Sandra's office, especially near the Christmas time, which is coming. That I always remember Sandra's delicious stollen that she baked herself and presented to me as an offering in the times of distress. So Sandra, you are just an amazing colleague with a common sense, with a level head, and with a very kind heart. And I think your professorship is very highly deserved. And I hope that not just from your econometrics formulas that just go totally beyond me, you know, even if you compare it to a candlestick, I still have no clue what you're talking about. But in that sort of time of need, when I needed support and help with student challenges, with things about how we structure programs, you've always given me so much and replenished me also with the beautiful food. So thank you so much for being who you are and bringing that, you know, that common sense and energy to the school that I think we all really cherish and appreciate. So that's all from me, and I just want to see what next for Sandra, and I'll be knocking on your door for the stollen, Sandra. I'm looking forward to my delicious treat for this Christmas. But thank you so much for your talk and for sharing your experience.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you, Rana.
welcome.
Oh, that's really lovely. Thank you for those kind words. Igor, if I move to you, do you like to?
Hello, Sandra, and thank you so much for this presentation. Congratulations also again, on becoming a professor. I had actually a question also related to the wall, that you mentioned. I'm sure you and as many others have followed the US elections, and 2 days ago, there was very interesting news adding to the list of those crashes on your list. There's a company called Trump Media, directly related to now the old new president of the US. And 2 days ago, it crashed, perhaps surprisingly, 3 times in a row. Yeah, so the trading had to be stopped each of those times because the price drop was significant, I think up to 15%. So the method you are using, is it or developed, is this applicable in this situation, or are we talking only about one crash, and if we get 2 more, and especially to the situation where stock crashes 3 times in a row within relatively short period of time, then everything breaks down. So it's little you can do at that stage, in determining volatility or other metrics.
We can deal with that as well. So that is the beauty of the methodology, actually, that because we only, meaning as long as we are able to pinpoint those 4 observations in a particular interval, and the interval can be a 1-minute interval or a 2-minute interval or a 5-minute, you decide the length. But the only thing I need to know in that particular interval is those 4 points. As long as we have those 4 points for information, you can calculate that particular estimate.
And that's predictive of what's likely to.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. And just out of curiosity, my question. So you were talking already about going into intervals below a second, yeah, so shorter than a second. So how quick is the trading now? Are we talking, I don't know, nanoseconds, or what was that?
At the moment, we are talking nanoseconds, meaning it's an awful lot and ugly data. Let me put it like that. I shouldn't say that openly, especially not if there are PhD students around here. But somehow it is. Meaning they can record nowadays trades at a nanosecond frequency. Now there is a difference between what they record and what you are going to use empirically, meaning most of the papers that are still written today use still second-by-second data, meaning you re-aggregate it to a little bit lower frequency, even if a second is still high frequency, but somehow most of the papers are still written on a second-by-second basis using nanosecond data, meaning it's basically using the highest frequency possible, but then working with a little bit lower one thereafter.
Yeah, thank you. Because you hear the stories about companies digging and then putting their cables to get quicker to where they need to be, stock exchanges. Yeah. Fascinating. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Olga's got her hand up, but can I just move to David's question in the chat? I don't know if David Ongolo is still here, but he asks, apart from predicting volatility, can the model be used to predict future stock price?
No, we are only predicting volatility, not stock prices with that particular methodology. Okay. That can't be.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Sandra. So, okay, thanks, David, for that question. And Olga, you get your hand up. I'm conscious of the time, so if we maybe take Olga's question and then we'll just wrap up if that's okay. But Olga, on you
Yeah.
go.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. First of all, I should say that Sandra, you are the best boss I've ever worked with in all my life. You hired me, well, pretty much a year ago and a bit, and I couldn't be happy about it. For the whole University of Lancaster and actually for the department, after really having the boss like you, it's like a dream. But it was just a comment, it's a question. The question which I have, it's a more philosophical one. You work now a lot with high frequency data and kind of financial econometrics. But
Yes.
as quite often happens in like research life, you happen to do this because of various factors. If now you will be given, like in the PhD, let's say, new 6 years, and you can do research in econometrics in any field you like, what would be your dream field of research?
That is really a difficult question, Olga. Notwithstanding why it is really difficult is, let me be completely honest, is being a head of department has its advantages in a way. But what is bad currently is I don't have the time to read anymore. Meaning reading research paper is something which I can say openly, my PhD students are doing that. And then usually they say, and I found a really exciting paper on that topic. And I'm there, I said, I don't have the time to read it because I really don't have the time to read it. Meaning, to answer your question, what would I do research on? I don't really know. I would need to sit down, but somehow meaning doing things maybe not necessarily at the nanosecond anymore, but maybe working more closely with companies on maybe looking at what factor investing, meaning there is a huge literature currently using factor investing and those kind of things, basically, to which maybe using the techniques that I know, which are meaning wind down, using high frequency techniques that I know about to maybe construct, and this is what we do with some particular PhD students, is looking more at can we actually construct high frequency factors and how can they actually influence the portfolio construction that companies have, meaning trying maybe to get closer to reality, because, well, meaning what I presented today can be used in practice, but most of the things that I did previously, if it is a high frequency estimator for whatever, industry is going to say, I don't care, Sandra. Meaning, I don't care about doing that on a second by second basis because we are trying to rebalance once a month our portfolio. So what the heck do I care what happens every second, basically? And so it's maybe pushing research closer to what real life, if you like, is looking, and not simply having this academic head on and say, I need, as an econometrician, I guess, I know, meaning, remember the time when we were PhD students, which was, at that time, the only important thing for me was I need to find an estimator which is the most accurate possible for the database I have in front of me. And then usually I failed publishing the work because the editor said to me, so what? And the answer for me was, God's sake, it works. It's an estimator which works. What do you want more? And it was, what's the application? Why it is useful for the outside world? And that is becoming nowadays more and more important, actually. Meaning, and I think that's a lack that I had starting my academic career. Meaning, I wrote a PhD dissertation on analyzing measurement errors in nonlinear regression models, basically, which was, I think, 90% theoretical, and it had a little bit of explanation of applications thereafter, which then you get to an accounting and finance department and they say, what is it good for? I said, for a lot of things, but I think there was not that touch to reality, actually, which I would advise all the PhD students is try to have a reality touch on what you do. If industry can use those techniques, especially when you are an econometrician, actually, somehow it's something which is more, is I would change, I think, or I would do. But the trouble, Olga, is I don't have the next 6 years free to do research. So
That's why
Unless
that was
the next- the
it was a
next 6 years.
hypothetical question. What would you do? Should you be so lucky suddenly having 6 years free of research and other commitments, as in like family, teaching, admin, just to research?
Yes. So
Thank you very much, Sandra.
Thank you.
Sandra, thank you so much for that wonderful start to this series. We all give you the warmest congratulations on your chair, and there's really lovely messages from our colleagues in the chat. Really lovely audience here today listening and asking good questions. So thank you so much for that today and for kicking off our series. I have got as a token of recognition of a certificate of this to note it, which I'll give to you when I next see you. I'll try and do some baking as well. I'm not sure I'll meet your standard. But thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This was an experiment for us with this first venture into this, and we're really grateful to everybody for participating, and we're really looking forward to our next one. Sonia, who has been the organiser around it all, has done a tremendous job and has also put the series up on the chat. So thank you everybody for your time, and hopefully we'll see you at our next one. So thank you to Sandra. I'm not sure how we do a virtual clap, so we can just all do that.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much. And I hope that is what you expected to have in a way, because
better than we expected. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, and
Thank
see you
you.
soon. Now we bring cake. It's okay.